What's up, everybody, and welcome to The Horror Within Me, a podcast dedicated to the world of horror. I am your host, Eric, and each week I'm going to rate and review a new movie or TV show that falls within the horror genre. Now, this is a show for horror fans, hosted by a horror fan, who's just here to share my opinions and experiences with my fellow horror friends in hopes that you may gain something new to watch or not watch, and really just talk about all things related to this beautifully dark and spooky world that we call horror. So if this sounds like a show for you, stick around, we're going to have a lot of fun. So let's get started. What's up, everybody, and welcome back to a brand new Spooky Sunday episode of The Horror Within Me. I'm your host, Eric, and this is a podcast where we review horror movies and other horror-related content. Welcome. If this is your first time tuning in, thank you for stopping by and checking this out. I really hope you enjoy yourself. If you are a returning repeat listener, thank you for your loyalty. I also really appreciate it. I'm very excited about today's episode because I have been looking back on past episodes and thinking like what I want to cover, and then I realized that today's date is August 13th. It is 2 days before my birthday. And my birthday is August 15th, if you can count. 13 plus 2. Anyway, it's not technically a Friday, but I haven't covered this movie. So if you're following and you've clicked on it, you already know it because of the name and the title. We are doing the original Friday the 13th, part 1 from 1980. I have looked at my episodes, and out of my favorite 3, top genre, slashers in the franchises, which are Friday the 13th, The Nightmare on Elm Street, and Halloween, I haven't covered any actual first entry in those franchises since this format of reviews. So I'm very excited to really start digging in and doing the movies and content that I love. This is going to be a really fun episode. But before we get into the episode, I want to talk about Monster Mania Con 55 that was in Cherry Hill last weekend. What a fucking amazing time. Highly suggest going if you're close to New Jersey or the Cherry Hill area when they come. I think there's also one in Oaks, PA that's coming up. I'm not really sure. I've never been to that one, but I'm sure it's probably very similar, and you can go on the website monstermania.com to figure out when they're doing shows. But they usually come to Cherry Hill around March and August of every year. So if you've been listening, I had entered to win 3 Trick or Treat Studio masks and a jumpsuit replica from Tyler Maine by purchasing a photo op ticket with him in costume with Michael Myers. So first of all, when I heard Tyler Maine was coming and doing an in-person photo op in the Rob Zombie Halloween getup, I was instantly very excited because I wanted to do a picture with Michael Myers that was in one of the movies in costume. While the Rob Zombies weren't always my favorite, I always thought that Tyler Maine did an amazing Michael. He's a huge guy, very intimidating, very scary. So I was very excited to meet him and also do a photo op with him. And then obviously really hoping to win the 3 masks and the jumpsuit replica because I am collecting all of the masks. Only have so far Halloween Kills, Halloween 2, and Halloween 1978 from Trick or Treat Studios. And these 3 masks that you win would be 3 of the Rob Zombie Halloweens from Trick or Treat Studios. Anyway, I won. So I am fucking ecstatic. If you follow me on TikTok or social media, you already knew that I won. But I really wanted to say it on the show, first of all, when I got to Monster Mania, the first person that I got in line for was Heather Langenkamp, which I'm backing up before we get into the whole Tyler Maine story because I want to touch base on everything first. Heather Langenkamp's line was not that bad. As soon as I got in, I went right there. Such a sweet woman. I told her that I've been, it's on my bucket list to meet her. She asked if I drove a long way. I explained I was very close. She was like, well, that's good for you. Picture came out great. It's on the socials if you want to check it out. Her autograph is awesome, and I picked a picture of her and Freddie from Dream Warriors, and I thought that was just amazing. Second person I got in line for was Alyssa Sutherland, who played Ellie in Evil Dead Rise. Me and my niece, who was there with us, because it was me, my niece, Anaya, my sister Heather, and my husband Ryan that went. And We got in line for Alyssa Sutherland, and we each got our own autographed photo, but we took a photo selfie with her together. She, guys, Alyssa Sutherland was one of the nicest people, and she was literally talking to all of her fans for like an extended period of time. Her line took so long to get through. But this, like, don't make a mistake. This is not me complaining about her, because I thought that was so genuine and so fucking awesome of her to do that. And when I got closer to the table, the volunteer that was working at her table was saying that people were complaining, but then they were the same people that would have like 30 questions for her. Don't ever lose that connection with your fans. I think it's amazing. I love that she talked to both me and my niece, who is 13, who was very shy. She engaged with both of us. Wonderful, wonderful woman. Makes me love her and Evil Dead Rise 1,000 times more. And right next to her booth was Tyler Mane. So I was like, the photo op was at 1. We're coming up at 11:30 or something like that. I was like, all right, we have time. I'm going to jump in because I would love, because like they say, the photo ops are like quick. They're like in and out. You get in, you get out. And I really wanted to meet him first. So I got in line with my husband, because Tyler Mane, if you don't know, also played Sabretooth in the X-Men 2000 film, which I'm a huge X-Men fan, always have been, and Sabretooth was always a great villain in the series. So double whammy on that, like Michael Myers and Sabretooth. I was super excited to meet him. So me and my husband get a picture. This guy's like 6'7", 6'9". Really nice though. I was like, hi, introduced myself. I said that I was, really wanted to meet him, but I was doing a photo op, and he was like, oh, that's really cool. Took a picture with us, and then, I went on my way. So when we get to the photo op, it's our turn to get in. The lady at the booth or at the entrance of the photo op was like, just FYI, these two masks here and the things that Tyler is wearing, you have been entered to win automatically. So check out our socials later on to see if you won. I was like, oh yeah, I know. I'm very excited. I really hope I win. We get in, and when I tell you it is fast, it is fast. But the funny thing is, my husband is 6'2". Tyler is like 6'7", 6'9", or whatever. I walk by first. Ryan tries to walk in front of him to get on my side too. He grabs that man by his shoulder and pulls him on the other side, and like a rag doll. And like poor Ryan, he brought his cane just in case, because he still, gets weak fast, and really wanted to enjoy the day. So he had left the cane in, like we had to leave our belongings outside. So this guy didn't know that he was like on a cane or anything. So Ryan's like, oh my God, I almost fucking fell over. But pictures turned out really awesome. Again, that's on the socials if you want to check it out. We do everything. We get some things. I got a Nightmare on Elm Street 3 replica glove from NECA that was there. That was super cool. I met a really cool guy from Fright Rags, who actually we follow each other on TikTok. So that was really fun to meet someone that I know on social media. Hi, if you're listening. It was really cool to meet you. It's such a great community to go around and meeting people. And then there were other people on TikTok that I saw that were there that I was friends with that I didn't know at the time while I was there. And there's just something so exciting about all of this, and knowing this community of people really, really, really is why I do this, and why I return every week, and why I post everything I post. It's just so fun. So getting back to the Tyler Mane story, we're done at this point. We're like, I'm guessing he had a photo op on Sunday because this was a Saturday, and that we'll find out tomorrow about the winners or whatever. So we leave. We go to a diner 8 minutes away to eat because we're starving at this point. We stopped at a Target, got some photo frames to hang the autographed stuff on my wall. We're sitting down at the diner. I didn't even think I ordered a drink yet. And Heather pulls her phone out, and she's like, oh my God, Eric, you won. And I'm like, what do you mean? And she flips the phone over, and it's Monster Mania on Facebook that's like, Eric McKenna, you're the winner of the 3 masks from Trick or Treat Studios. Please report to the photo op booth. I'm like, deuces, I am leaving all at the diner. Ryan, give me your car keys. I said to her, are you coming with me? So she came with me. We drove back there. Parking is impossible, but I found a spot blocks down. Speed walking like we're in the airport about to miss a fucking flight. Speed walking like all hell. I get in there. I get to the photo op. They're like, what are you doing? You can't get in line. I was like, no. I was told to meet here. I won the trick-or-treat things. And they're like, what's your name? They check my ID. And they're like, okay, hold on. And then this other girl that was walking around for photo ops with a loudspeaker, I'd asked when we originally got in line for Tyler Mane if I was going the right way. So when she was like, oh my God, you're Eric McKenna. I have been looking everywhere for you, walking around, asking people if they knew you, using the speaker. Nobody could find you. I'm like, I'm here. I'm here. Then they come out with this massive, like 3 masks in this jumpsuit. And this jumpsuit, guys, is no fucking joke. Shout out to Teddy at Alter Ego Creations. He made this jumpsuit and it is such good quality, such good quality. So make sure you check out his page. And then the mask, obviously from Trick or Treat Studios. I tagged everyone on the Facebook and Instagram posts, so you can check that out there too. But they're like, Tyler said you can come back to the table if you want to get anything signed. I look at my niece, I said, we're going back. I hope his line is not ridiculously long at this point because like I left Heather and Ryan at the diner. So we get back, get to the line, only like a few people were in front of me. So they had a post-it with my name on it waiting for me. And so I'm like, I'm the winner. And he's like, you're the winner. And it was so cool. He was like, can I get a picture of you with holding it up? Can I get a video? You know, he wants to post it because all proceeds that he did for Monster Mania are going to a human trafficking, fight against human trafficking campaign. Such good cause. So he was very excited to announce the winner because he'd been posting on his socials like about it. So I held it up, so you can check that out too. I also reshared that on Facebook, or you can go over to Tyler Main's Instagram or Facebook to get that reel as well of me on his social media channel. But anyway, he signed all 3 masks. So the masks were the Halloween 1 Rob Zombie, the Halloween 2 Dream Sequence, and then the Halloween 2 mask that has like half the face missing. Just so awesome. I feel like it's an early birthday present to me. I never win anything, and of all the things to win, it would be like 3 Myers masks and the jumpsuit. It's just so surreal to me, and you could see it behind me now. That is part of the mask and jumpsuit that came with the shirt that he was wearing in the photo op, and it's just a dream come true. And I want to say thank you again to everyone that has said congratulations to me. It really means so much to me, and these are things that I collect. These are not things that I look about selling. Like these are like real big value to me. So I'm just so fucking happy. So that was my weekend at Monster Mania. I just am still riding that high and I can't wait to continue doing so moving forward. I've been rearranging some stuff going on in here. I've ordered some more mass display stands for my other stuff. So hopefully they come in a few weeks. So that was my Monster Mania story. So let's move on with the show. Let's get into, we talked a lot about Michael Myers, but today's episode is more about Friday the 13th, which is fitting because it's the 13th, even though it's not a Friday, whatever. Anyway, we're going to do what we always do. We're going to get ready to talk about all the synopsis and the starring and when it was released. But before we get started, we have to do this week's terrifying trivia question. So this week's terrifying trivia question is, who does Pamela Voorhees try to tell Alice she is a friend of? Again, the question is, who does Pamela Voorhees try to tell Alice she is a friend of? Stick around to the end of this episode to get the answer. All right, guys, so it's talking about Friday the 13th. And if you look at the title, I named this episode, Did You Know a Young Boy Drowned Here? It's something that Pamela says, and it's something that has stuck out to me that we created this kind of parody joke between myself, my niece Anaya, and my sister Heather. And it's just like to the point where like we're named a chat about it. It's so fucking great. But there's no way that I can do this this movie in this episode without honoring that and naming it this week's episode. Friday the 13th will always be, like the franchise as a whole too, will always be so near and dear to me because I honestly think that the Friday the 13th franchise was something I saw before I even saw Halloween. I remember at a very, very, very young age, my mom watching them and having me watch them. And I was allowed, I've said it on past episodes, I was allowed to watch Jason murder people in sleeping bags, but I wasn't allowed to see the breasts of girls. Little did she know. I used to hide behind our love seat and like peek up and watch, but being so terrified. And that's something that like didn't scar me because I think that's the beginning of my addiction to horror. And it's just something that's so great to me. And no matter how terrible the movies are, there was something that I'm always going to be drawn back to. So this is, whenever I do a Friday the 13th or a Halloween or a Freddy, like a Nightmare on Elm Street. Like there's so much power behind it to me. Like it is a very important episodes. They're to me, they mean a lot. There's a lot of history with them in me, and how I've learned from them and studied them and watched them throughout my life. I'm going to be 37 on the 15th, and we're talking 30 years ago at the least that I've watched these movies and franchises yearly. So these are ones that I feel very passionate about. So let's get into it. The IMDb synopsis of Friday the 13th is a group of camp counselors trying to reopen a summer camp called Crystal Lake, which has a grim past, are stalked by a mysterious killer. Very weird synopsis, but I think it hits the nail on the head. Like, it's exactly what it is. Friday the 13th. Let's retry that. Friday the 13th stars Betsy Palmer as Mrs. Voorhees, Adrienne King as Alice, Janine Taylor as Marcy, Robbie Morgan as Annie, Kevin Bacon as Jack, Harry Crosby as Bill, Laurie Bartum as Brenda, Mark Nelson as Ned, and Peter Brower as Steve Christie. And you heard right, Kevin Bacon, and that is the Kevin Bacon. Yes, if this is one of his first roles, I believe, in movies. So definitely yes. Go back if you've never seen it just to see Kevin Bacon that young act in a horror movie. It is amazing. Friday the 13th was released on May 9th, 1980, directed by Sean S. Cunningham, produced by Sean S. Cunningham, written by Victor Miller. It has a rating of R, a runtime of 1 hour, 35 minutes, falls under the horror, mystery, thriller genres. The tagline, which is funny, this is the UK theatrical tagline only. On Friday the 13th, they began to die horribly. ... One ... by one. How amazing is that fucking tagline, UK? Props to you. And it has an IMDb rating of 6.4 out of 10, a tomato meter of 63%, and an audience score on Rotten Tomatoes of 60%. I'm not shocked by the ratings whatsoever. I'm just not. It's a 1980s slasher, and we're gonna get into many different reasons why it could be worse or could be better. And just FYI, I think the legal battles between Sean S. Cunningham and Victor Miller have finally been resolved. It was a years long legal battle and over the rights to the movie and to Jason, and to the point where like it shut down any future add-ons and DLCs for the Friday the 13th by Gun Media game, which sadly the servers are shut down in December 31st next year. The game will be stopped being sold by the December 31st of this coming year. So get in the game while you can. It is so much fun, even if it's full of bugs and full of trolls, you can still have a really good time. The graphics are amazing. The attention to the movies are amazing. The music, the soundtrack, everything about it, just great. Also, shout out to the NES video game Friday the 13th with another yet iconic soundtrack on that and an impossible game to beat. We were introduced to purple and blue, or purple and green Jason, and everything about that game is fucking beautiful. Please just release it on the Switch for like $2.99 so people can play it. But that is the on paper information of Friday the 13th. It's time to get into the first segment of the show, which is the top 3 best and worst reviews of Friday the 13th on IMDb. Coming in with the top 3 best reviews first, we have the first one titled Classic Slasher Film. This was written in June of 2019. It says, Friday the 13th is a classic slasher film, a horror cult film. It brought Jason Voorhees and his mother Pamela Voorhees to the horror cinema. The script is simple but effective. A summer camp is reopened by a group of teenagers. A serial killer looking for revenge is killing them one by one. This plot line is imitated even today, but without the creepy feeling of Friday the 13th. Kevin Bacon, a big Hollywood actor, did one of the first roles here. The camp's atmosphere is cool, creepy, and loneliness. The film also brought a new scream queen, Adrienne King, a young actress with great lungs. Tom Savini made a great and gory makeup effects. Friday the 13th opened a franchise, brought an iconic 80s serial killer, and the horror of this camp is still working. I can't talk and I keep doing that weird blah, 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 blah. So I'm going to just keep doing it and get it out of the way one last time. Blah, 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 blah. No more. No more of that. Okay, first thing about this review is the thing that caught me was, where is it? The plot line is imitated even today. I don't know if the plot line from Friday the 13th is imitated. There's a lot of similarities. There's a lot of main ingredients that slashers take. And the camp's atmosphere is cool, creepy, and loneliness. I'm not sure what they were trying to get at with loneliness. I don't. Secluded, I think, is a better word. And fun fact, the first Friday the 13th film was filmed in New Jersey. I don't remember the exact location, but there's a real camp. It's called Camp Nobi Bosco, and it is still a functioning summer camp. So you can't just show up there. It's like trespassing, but they do have a whole section dedicated to showing that the film was filmed there. And every now and again, they will sell tickets for a Friday the 13th tour, which are super expensive. I have not done it. It's on my bucket list just because I need to go and see it in person. All of the other films I don't believe were filmed in New Jersey, but they're all set in New Jersey. So Jason Voorhees and his family are Jerseyans like your host here, Eric. That's super exciting. Just like little Michael Myers, even though he's in Haddonfield, Illinois, Haddonfield, New Jersey is where they got the name because Deborah, God, I can't even think of her name. I have Deborah Hill was from Haddonfield. My God. Anyway, back to the review. Brought a new Scream Queen, Adrienne King. She was at Monster Mania in March, along with the other, with Ginny, the actress that played Ginny from Friday the 13th 2, and the two actresses from Friday the 13th 3 and 4. I don't remember their names. I apologize. I didn't think about writing it down ahead of time, but I didn't get to meet them, and I'm a little sad. But yes, I loved Adrienne King in this film. I thought she did an amazing job, and we all know Tom Savini is a fucking badass. Enough said. We're going to move on to this second best review. This one is titled Camp Crystal Lake. It's Got a Death Curse. This was written in October of 2020. I love It's Got a Death Curse. I love the old man. He was like a staple in the franchise, just showing up, trying to warn fucking campers and counselors and teenagers of going there, and nobody ever listened to him. Nobody ever listened to that man. Anywho, Friday the 13th has interesting beginnings. Sean Cunningham put out an ad for the film and called it the scariest film ever made, when in reality, there wasn't even a script written for the film. He wanted to see if he'd get sued for using the name. Luckily, he didn't, and with the help of some investors, he made the movie. Many people at the time thought that this film was a ripoff of Halloween, which had been released just a couple of years earlier, but Friday would go on to have its own imitators. This first film in the series is considered a horror classic, and it's a well thought out story. There's a motive for the murder. The cast is great. The score is superb, and it has one of the best endings of any horror film. If you love horror and have not seen Friday the 13th, stop what you are doing and watch this classic right away. I picked this one because I thought it was a fun fact in the beginning, because it's actually, I've seen that on a documentary. I do believe it's true that he did put it out there, the scariest film ever made, and then people were getting traction, and then he went and started to make the movie. And many people felt that it was a ripoff of Halloween. It actually is a ripoff of Halloween because it was titled Halloween. It was made in 78, and it blew the people's minds. So he's like, well, I can do a day. Let's do Friday the 13th and see if we can pull this off. And they did. Let's see. The first film in the series is considered a horror classic. I completely agree. It does have motive for the murder. It does have a great cast, and the score is amazing. So I thought that this was a really great review and a fun fact to add into the Friday the 13th information if you didn't know that already. Moving on to the last best review for Friday the 13th on IMDb. This one is titled, Just Like Jason, This Movie Will Never Die. This was written in October of 2007. We all know the rules. Sex equals death. Drinking and drug equals death. Now, you don't think after all these years the counselors would learn something. No. That's what makes this low-budget independent film a true classic. Back in 1980, we were just getting settled into the horror slasher genre. Please note Halloween 2 years earlier and Psycho 20 years earlier. Friday the 13th was a major boost to the slasher genre. All the different cliches, especially POV, point of view shots. This movie brought out the scared little kid in all of us. This movie also defined the psychopathic killer we all know as Jason Voorhees. If there ever becomes 13 Wonders of the World, Friday the 13th should be the 13th Wonder. No pun intended. I think he definitely had a pun intended there, but it was well enough placed. We'll allow it. Yes, the rules. We all know the rules. Sex, if you haven't sex, drinking, or doing drugs in a horror movie, that equals death back then in the 80s. They still talk about it to this day. Teenagers are never going to learn because they're teenagers and that's what they do. Sex, drugs, rock and roll, live young, die young, all that cliche shit is part of the ingredients of a great horror movie. Correct. We were just getting started into the slasher genre, so Friday the 13th came at the perfect time just to cement itself as a newer kind of thing, and I love the point of view shots. I thought it was a nice touch because we were watching the killer do things, and instead of being just with the, survivors of the or the murdered victims of the franchises. So that was a really cool touch, and I agree with this that there are different cliches. And also that the movie brought the scared little kid out of us. And we all know I had to pick this because we usually hear this mostly in the negative reviews, but this one was fun because it was a positive review saying if there ever becomes a 13th Wonder of the World, Friday the 13th, this should be the 13th Wonder. I don't know if I completely agree with that. I won't go that far, but I appreciate the review. That wraps up the top 3 best reviews on IMDb for Friday the 13th. Moving on to the top 3 worst reviews of Friday the 13th on IMDb. The first one is titled Overrated. This was written in July of 2006. Here we go. As a fan of horror movies, I must say that Friday the 13th is overrated. It's so absurd, boring, not frightening, or interesting in any way. The acting is bad, very bad. The plot is stupid, and the murder is so predictable and lame that I almost laugh instead of scare. It begins very nice, but it gets boring after a few minutes. I thought that this one will be a huge movie because it's so popular in the genre of horror movies, but I was really disappointed. I'll give you advice. Stay away from this one. If you want real horror movie, you must watch The Exorcist. It's much better than this crap. Or if you want a slasher movie, you can try A Nightmare on Elm Street or Halloween. Here we go. Oh, God. Okay. What is it with when we're reviewing slasher movies that people don't like? They always say if you want a better movie, go watch The Exorcist. I think I've said this before. The Exorcist and is not a slasher. It's a possession movie. They are completely different kinds of movies. Not everyone that likes that's probably what the problem is. Like, you can't send somebody looking for a slasher to go see The Exorcist. Now, you did redeem yourself a little bit by talking about A Nightmare on Elm Street or Halloween. They are better ones to direct people to, but I don't understand why you just throw The Exorcist in there. As not a part of the slasher genre. Stop doing this to people. Stop sending people to possession movies if they're not looking for a possession movie when you're writing a review on a slasher movie. I said that as fast as possible. Keep up. Moving on to the next worst review, titled Awful. Just Awful. This was written in December of 2009. Of the 3 big slasher movies, this one, Halloween, and A Nightmare on Elm Street, this is by far the worst, and that's saying something, considering the other 2 ain't so great. This film is just plain awful. painfully boring for the first part, it slips into unintentional comedy punctuated periodically by the least scary murder sequences you can imagine. How this became a supposed horror classic is way beyond me. I don't see how anyone could appreciate this film or even call it good cinema, which would imply this is art. The day this is considered art is the day the world ends. Worst of all, this film inspired a million other awful films. Thanks a lot, you awful movie. Um, this person, this person trashed all three of my favorite. So fuck you, first of all. Second of all, clearly, if you didn't like any of them, maybe this just isn't. Maybe horror, this type of horror, is not for you. I don't know. Like, I don't think it got unintentionally comedy. There are parts I laughed at, but I don't think it was unintentional. And you don't see how anyone could appreciate this film. And then saying that it's not art, it's fucked up. These people worked hard, they made a movie, and guess what? They don't really care about your fucking opinion because it did spawn a million fucking sequels, and everyone involved is iconic and gone down in history. So the joke's on you. Also, it's just, here we go. Here's one of these extreme things. The day this is considered art is the day the world ends. The world has ended, people, because somebody called Friday the 13th art. How dare someone be subjective, and how dare that be something that's allowed in the goddamn world? You ended the world by calling this art. Now I can't do my podcast anymore. We have to start scavenging for food. I have to learn how to fight because the undead are coming, or the cold is staying forever. I don't know how the world ends from this. I'm just making things up from apocalypse movies that I've seen and shows. Anyway, fuck off. Moving on to the last worst review of Friday the 13th on IMDb. It's titled, The Worst Movie I've Ever Seen. This was written in July of 2001. Here we go. An inane slasher flick that's poorly done in every thinkable way. The acting is horrible, the writing is horrible, and the cinematography is pathetic. The film is too obviously low budget, but not even more money could salvage this turkey of a movie. The film has no thrills. In fact, it's painfully boring. Anyone with half a brain could have written a screenplay better than this. Although the idea of a bunch of teens getting slaughtered at a dark camp by a lake is a rather good premise for a horror movie, it isn't used well here. There's nothing enjoyable about this movie. It's most definitely the worst movie I've ever seen. I thought Halloween was bad, but Friday the 13th makes Halloween look like something just short of Shakespeare. Don't think I'm some old person who hates all horror movies. I'm a teenager who loved Scream and also liked I Know What You Did Last Summer. Well, there you go, guys. There you go, folks. I think that last sentence they thought was a redeeming quality, but it just goes to show that you have no fucking idea what you were talking about, because movies like Scream and I Know What You Did Last Summer were created because of movies like Halloween and Friday the 13th. But your little teenager brain wasn't getting it. So you didn't appreciate the path that was laid for your quote-unquote movies that you love. And you bashed Halloween, and now I also still don't like you. So this is what I'm talking about. Obviously low budget. Yes, because it was 1979 when they were making a movie, and I believe the budget was $550,000, which is only $250,000. I think it was almost double what Halloween had a budget of. And they did what they could do with what they had, and they became iconic again, which is what paved the way. But people have no appreciation for all of that. And thinking that you're an old person, no, because somebody older at that time would have probably liked those movies because it was around their time that they had come out. So no, we didn't think that. We thought exactly what you were, a teenager who would have not understood what these movies were about. But that concludes this week's top 3 best and worst reviews on IMDb for the 1980 film Friday the 13th. So let's move on to what I liked most about Friday the 13th. I had to really think about it because I've seen, like I said, I've seen these movies for decades. And what is it that keeps going back? Is it the nostalgia? Is it a character? What is it about it? And I think for the first Friday the 13th, what I really appreciated the most and what I really, really liked the most was the who done it aspect to the movie. Um, because like in A Nightmare on Elm Street and in Halloween, we knew it was Freddy Krueger. We knew it was Michael Myers who escaped. But in Friday the 13th, we didn't know who was killing these counselors, right? We just knew that we saw a hand and a knife or an axe or whatever murder weapon they were using, but we never got an idea of who it was. Was it another counselor that was already there? Like it was the beginning of a whodunit in a way, without a ghost face scream kind of whodunit. So I really appreciate that. I think it holds up very well. And the twist of who it is at the end of the movie, which spoiler, we all know is Jason's mother, Mrs. Voorhees, is something that we didn't know or expect to happen. Because exactly in the time we had like Leatherface, we had Michael Myers, we had male serial killers, and here we have this middle-aged woman who's got revenge on this camp for her son drowning to death. It's actually a solid motive. It makes sense. Because she worked at the camp. She was a cook there. So her son got to go there for free, but he was already a little handicapped and deformed, and they just didn't pay attention because they were having sex, and he drowned. So she snapped. It was just her and Jason. That's all she had in her life, and she decided to take revenge. It's not an unrealistic plot. I thought that the whole idea of Friday the 13th is got so much heart to it that people don't talk about enough. But we're going to move into what I liked the least about the movie. And every time I think about what I like the least about Friday the 13th, it's always the death scenes. It had great effects for its time. The actors were okay, but when they were pretending to be killed, it was so comical sometimes that it's just too much for me. Like it was too like cartoonish, like, oh my god, pretend to die, and you're like, like, you know what I mean? Like it's just there's a scene where one of the girls is about to get killed and she just and like that's it. It's just a little over the top. And so if I had to pick something, it was the way that the characters just portrayed being murdered on screen. I don't know. That's what I like the least about it. So let's see. Where are we at in this show? Oh, it's time to answer this week's terrifying trivia question. So let's do a refresher. The question was, who does Pamela Voorhees try to tell Alice she is a friend of? And the answer is, when Alice first meets Mrs. Voorhees outside by the Jeep, Mrs. Voorhees tells Alice that she is a friend of the Christies, who is the family of Steve Christie, who is the owner of the camp that we meet in the beginning of the film. So that's how she tries to, because she doesn't just come right out and try to kill Alice right away. She pretends to be this friend, and then she starts telling her the story, which is an iconic scene. She's like, did you know a young boy drowned here? Which is when it starts, and she's, Alice is starting to realize what's going on, and that's when the real sequence of the final act begins, and it's such a great final act. I can give it that. I love the final act with Alice and Pamela. The fighting, the suspense. It is a great fucking scene. So well done. And I actually heard that the fight scene, they had like pro fighters do like tell them how to do the scene because they couldn't figure out how to do that part. And it shows. It's a great fight. It really is. So we're in a slasher, right? So let's reveal the number of kills in Friday the 13th. So my source this week for the number of kills in Friday the 13th comes from ScreenRant.com, and according to them, there are 10 kills in Friday the 13th. 9 committed by Pamela Voorhees, and then the 10th being actually Pamela Voorhees herself, who is decapitated with a machete by Alice on the beach of the lake. So, we've reached the point in the show where it is time to do the final rating and review of Friday the 13th. So my rating this week, we're going to use hunting knives because that is what Mrs. Voorhees was pulling out of her little hunting knife satchel thing. I don't know what they're fucking called. It's a belt. I'm weird. So anyway, I give Friday the 13th 8 out of 10 hunting knives. It drops 2 points for the crazy ways the actors were portraying to die. I think if they would have did it differently, I would have given it a 10 out of 10. And here's my final review. Friday the 13th is a low-budget Halloween ripoff, but somehow it works. The special effects were very well done for its time, thanks to the amazing Tom Savini. The acting of Adrienne King and Betsy Palmer were top-notch, and their on-screen fight is iconic. The soundtrack is spooky and fun. This film started as a whodunit and kept audiences on the edge of their seats. And let's not forget, this is the movie that birthed one of the most iconic slashers in horror movie history, Jason Voorhees. This movie will be a classic now, then, and in the future. Friday the 13th is available to rent now on Amazon Prime Video for $2.99. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to rate and review. Stay safe, everybody. But more importantly, stay spooky. Thanks again for joining me on this week's episode of The Horror Within Me. If you enjoyed this episode, please rate and review wherever you listen to your podcast. And for even more Horror Within Me content, visit my link tree at linktr.ee/horrorwithinme for links to the website, my Patreon, and all of my social channels to stay up to date on all the spooky stuff that we're doing. So be safe, and until next time, stay spooky.